What is inside the bill for your godless device? A free phone for someone else. And have you ever heard of the benevolent empire? We'll talk about it today.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
Hello, can you hear me? I'll be giving you your free cell phone soon. Trapped inside of your godless device is a free cell phone for another American. All right, I want to talk to you today a little bit. That was a poor attempt at comedy. There was a story recently, a couple days ago, about some media outlet in Denver that uncovered abuse with Lifeline, this phone company that is giving away phones because they call them Obama phones. Remember, and some sources say that 13 million phones have been given away so far. 13 million. In fact, let's play this clip. You'll remember this. If you don't, you'll have fun watching it.
Everybody in Cleveland, low minority, got Obama phone. Keep Obama in president, you know. He gave us a phone.
He gave you a phone.
Do more.
How'd he give you a phone?
You sign up if you on food stamps, you on Social Security, you got low income, you disability.
All right, well, there you have it. This cuts to a very big and significant discussion that I want to have with you about the care of the poor. And I'm going to use this as a backdrop and ask you to ponder and to think and to have an open mind and to at least discuss the philosophical underpinnings. All right? Are you hearing me? The sociological underpinnings of one school of thought and another school of thought. And this all involves the care of the poor. And by the way, your phone bill, your and my phone bill, when we pay our cell phone bill, if you've got one, in your phone bill is a tax. And that tax is what is used to give other people free phones. And what they uncovered with the abuse is that if you're on food stamps or any type of government assistance, Section 8 housing, several things, if you show proof of this to one of these free phone distributors, they'll give you a phone and it'll have minutes on it, okay? So this media outlet showed the abuse when somebody that wasn't even on food stamps took someone else's food stamps, their card, and showed it, and, oh yeah, here, we'll give you a phone, gave him a phone. And then caught one of the distributors of the phone telling someone, well, I can't just give you a phone, but if you'll go and get someone else's food stamps, we'll give you the phone. So this is so glaringly obvious that it would be a place of abusing the system. But I don't want to look at the abuse. That's almost like a little gotcha. The abuse of the system of giving away cell phones, in many ways, is not the point. The point is the care of the poor, all right? Jesus said, what you do to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you do to me. I was hungry. You fed me. I was naked. You clothed me. I was thirsty. You gave me a drink. Right? Jesus said to the people who were sent from John the Baptist, tell John that these miracles are happening and that the poor have the gospel preached to them. If you read the four Gospels, there is little doubt that there seems to be, that there is a soft spot in the heart of the Lord for the poor and the needy. So much so that in Matthew 25, when Christ discusses the future judgment of the sheep and the goats, the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left, the sheep going into eternal bliss and the goats going into eternal damnation, it revolves extensively around the poor, around the needy, around the marginalized, All right? So we know that God has a heart for the poor. The question is this, and this is what I want to discuss on today's show, and I just ask you to stay with me. Okay? Please. The question is this. Does the government at the federal or state or local level have the authority granted by God? Okay? Does it have the authority, the just authority, to compel us to care for the poor in any number of ways, whether it's food stamps or cell phones? Does it have the authority to basically, in the form of law, does it have the authority to put a gun to our head and say, you're going to give food stamps, you're going to clothe the naked, you're going to give them cell phones, and Jesus said he's going to judge everyone based upon this. So we're doing the will of Jesus.
Hey, everyone's been asking me, when's Unstoppable coming out on DVD? Well, it's here. And I have created my own deluxe signature version of Unstoppable that contains not only the movie, but over 5 hours of additional curriculum and study guides for your family. It's perfect for your homeschool, educational facility, small group Bible study, and family devotions. And I'm going to share with you some of the spiritual warfare that surrounded the release of this film. This box set also includes extended scenes, new music videos, the inside scoop on the whole Facebook controversy. So what are you waiting for? I made this special version with my family in mind, and I know your family will be blessed by it too. Unstoppable 2.0 Deluxe Signature Version, available only here at kurtcameron.com. I can't wait for you to experience what's inside.
We have put together what we call an online university for you. Now that's a highfalutin way of saying that we have a pretty significant library of material, books, tapes, videos that are there for you for free. Why are we doing this? Because America is desperate for new leaders, and because this material could help you to become the leader that you and God want you to be. Check it out and enjoy it. Welcome back, friend. I am going to presume, when I do these next segments, I'm going to presume a certain level of desire, of knowledge, a love of the scriptures from our viewers as we discuss the care of the poor in the light of almost 50 million Americans on food stamps right now, 13 million new free cell phones given away. I say free. The president now pushing for national free community college for everyone. I'm going to assume a certain love of the scriptures and going to inject into this discussion, into your mind, certain key thoughts and principles, and then ask you to ponder it, ask you to do your own reading, ask you to turn off your television after this program, and to go out and get some good books, good theological books. Because it really is a critical discussion. We really will be judged on how we treat the least among us. It's no small thing. Once upon a time, I had George Stephanopoulos. You might remember that he was a key player in the Clinton administration. Years ago, I had a nationally syndicated radio show that was a big enough deal that I had George Stephanopoulos on my show discussing this very thing. And at one point in his life, if my memory is correct, he considered becoming an Episcopalian minister, and he did take some theology classes in college. And when I said to him, what right do you have to take, at the point of gun, our hard-earned money and give it to people, to redistribute it? And you know what he did? He quoted Matthew 25 to me. He quoted Matthew 25. Jesus said, you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. You took care of them. You gave them food, gave them water, gave them clothing. So it's a big deal. And as we know, the devil quotes the scripture. Satan quoted the scripture to Christ when he tempted Christ to throw himself down from the pinnacle of the temple. The devil believes and trembles, the Bible says. All right, so I'm going to presume a love of the scriptures and an open heart to at least discuss some of these things. And let's have this as a starting point. In the scriptures and in Christian theology that has been with us from the dawn of the Christian era, there are 4 governments established by God. 4 governments. All of them are under him. All right, so we have Christ the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the ruler of the universe, the giver of the law, the lawgiver. And under Christ, we have 4 governments. We have family government, church government, self-government, and civil government. Those 4, all right? And each of them have jurisdiction. They have an area where they're the boss. Okay, mom and dad are the boss of the 4-year-old, all right? Once in a while, there's overlap, okay? For example, if a 17-year-old steals a car, his dad might give him a thrashing, right? The church might say, we're not going to let him come to Sunday school till he gets his act together because he's a bad influence on the other kids, and he's going to be arrested by the police and stand before a judge, okay? And he's going to have some counseling sessions, and they're going to say, son, you got to learn to control yourself, self-government. So we see overlap here, all right? But the tyrannies, the great oppressive tyrannies of all time are when one of those 4 governments seeks to usurp the authority of another government. Like the government says, you're all going to be baptized. Whoa. Government doesn't have the right to tell us to be baptized. Or the church says, we're going to decide who the next leader of government civilly is. Or the civil government says, we're going to decide who the next bishop is. I mean, these are all things that have, well, forget the government, the church telling the government who's going to be king next, but the church, at one point, God forgive us, the church had people executed for learning certain prayers in their mother tongue, or for having certain religious works, religious books, all right? So the church corruptly worked with civil authorities to have people executed for what they were doing in their home regarding religious education. So these are the great tyrannies. When one of the 4 governments usurps the authority of another government or takes over the rights and the duties and the prerogatives of another one of those governments, okay? Those are the great tyrannies. Those are the great oppressions of human history. And I would submit to you, and I'll talk about this when we come back, that is the tyranny of Karl Marx regarding the care of the poor, right? God cares about the poor. Karl Marx didn't believe in God. He was an atheist, but he cared about the poor. And he said, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to play Robin Hood. We're going to steal from the rich. We're going to kill them if we need to. And we're going to give it to the poor. Is that what Jesus would do?
Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today.
I don't want to focus on the abuse of the system, whether it's free cell phones or whether it's food stamps, whatever it is. I want to justly and kindly discuss the care of the poor. I mentioned in the beginning of the program the benevolent empire. This was a name that was given to a movement of Christians in America in the 19th century that involved the wealthy and the upper middle class showing kindness to the poor, helping to extend the kindness of Christ to the unfortunate, to the needy, okay? It involves social activities, as they are called in some circles. And it was done with gusto by many people. And it was done as a fulfillment of Christian duty, all right? Matthew 25. It was Grover Cleveland who vetoed a bill to send wheat to farmers who had had a massive crop failure to try and rescue them. And Cleveland said, I do not have the authority to take other people's money and to give it to those farmers. Go and raise the money, he said. And they did. And if my memory is correct, that they got like 10 times the amount that they were even asking for from Congress. Now, I bring that up about Grover Cleveland because there were other fights along the way where people tried to use the federal treasury to help the poor, the needy, those who had a natural disaster or whatever. And the people that were in government at the time, some of them said, yeah, let's do it. And others said, no, we don't have the authority to do it. But they said, let's help them as neighbors. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So the benevolent empire sought to do this, to help people. And it was good, and it was just, and it was Christian. Okay? The issue is, does the government have the right to compel us to do it? Or is that a violation of the four governments? Now, for those of you who are students of the Old Testament, you will know that there are a lot of things in the Old and the New Testament, for that matter, a lot of outlines, if you will, or a lot of steps that the Lord put in place to care for the poor. What is the number one firewall against poverty and hunger? The number one firewall. Labor. Work. Paul said, if a man will not work, let him not eat. There's a proverb that says, the hunger of the laborer drives him on. God said, you're going to make your bread by the sweat of your brow. Okay? There's a direct connection between labor and food. The laborer himself working so that he can get food. That's step number one. And if somebody is able-bodied and they just won't work, well, then there's a problem. All right, so that's number one. Number two, what's the next? Family. Family. A man who does not provide for his own is worse than an infidel. Okay? It is the duty of parents to take care of their children. The duty of extended family. Then we talk about extended family. And what constitutes a true widow? Paul said, let true widows be taken into the care of the church. Oh, the care of the church. Paul didn't say, let true widows be taken care of by the Roman Empire or by Caesar. It was let them come into the church. But they had to be a true widow. They had to be alone in the world. No children that could take care of them. Because Jesus said that it was the duty, in effect, what he said, it was the duty of adult children to care for their elderly parents. All right? That's a part of how God takes care of the poor. Another way in the Old Testament, we see that from time to time the Levites would gather foodstuffs, and then those would be distributed to the poor. We see that the Lord talked about leaving the gleanings. They were to leave the edges of a field so that the poor of the land could come in and could gather it. We even see that God said somebody can go into a field of standing grain, okay, and can take some of the grain and rub it in their fingers and eat it. That's what Jesus and his apostles were doing. They were going through a field. Remember that time? And the Pharisees were saying, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath? And when I first started reading the Bible, I thought, well, who cares that they're doing it on the Sabbath? They're stealing this man's grain. They're going in and taking grain and eating it. But it was a part of Levitical law, biblical law, that the hungry could go into a field and eat what was there. They couldn't take any away. This wasn't the gleanings, but they could take some and eat it. But notice that all of these things, these exquisite ways that people help one another, and God's saying you cannot keep a man's cloak overnight if he left it to you as a pledge, because how's he going to stay warm in the night? So much care for the poor. Be careful how you treat the poor, the widow, the orphan among you. If you mistreat them and they cry out to me, God said, I'll make your wife a widow, I'll make your children orphans. It's really critical. But what's the one thing that's absent in all of these things that I gave you? One thing that's absent. I'll tell you when I come back.
I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years. And sadly, we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. Why does a nice guy like me keep getting thrown in jail? I have been arrested almost 50 times and spent over a year of my life locked up in various prison facilities. And I wrote a book, many books. In fact, one of them is called, Why Does a Nice Guy Like Me Keep Getting Thrown in Jail? It's a theological work, answering those who say that the church should not be involved in politics or that we should retreat. I encourage you to get it. In fact, get one and give it to your pastor.
As we study the scriptures and look at how God says that the poor should be taken care of, what is the one thing that is not present in all of those venues? Ready? Government compulsion. There's no civil, criminal penalty if people don't do it. I mean, God says if you mistreat the orphan and the widow, I'll kill you. That's what he said, basically. I'll kill you. I'll make your wife a widow and your children orphans. That's saying, God's saying, be careful what you do, how you treat them, because I'll hear their cry. But God doesn't say, do this or I'm going to have Caesar kill you, or I'm going to have you go to jail. And that's the difference. What separates Christian charity from Marxism, socialism, is the element of compulsion. So when we look at free cell phones or free community college for everyone or cash for clunkers or the bailout of our mortgages, a part of us can have true, genuine compassion. I've been in serious need before, had real crisis economically, true crisis, and been down to the last dollar, you know what I mean? Really and truly. And it was my Christian brothers and sisters who came and who helped. The government didn't put a gun to their head, and I didn't ask Uncle Sam to force other people. And there are times when I may have growing up, because I was taught that this was okay. It wasn't until I started to really study the scriptures and realize, oh my goodness, this is not right. We used to have foster children, and towards the end, they would pay us like $1,000 a month. Towards the end, I just said, I'm not going to take the $1,000 a month for like the last 5 months, because I started to say, I'm not sure the government has the authority to compel people to give me money to take care of these kids. And then when I adopted them, they said, we'll give you money for the rest of their childhood, because they're hard to place children. We'll give you money every month. And I said, no, I'm not taking this money. But there was a time when I did take some of that money when I had these foster children. So I'm not trying to be unkind. I'm not trying to condemn anyone, but I'm trying to have the conversation. We must care for the poor. We must love them. We must be merciful. We must be part of the benevolent empire. But does the government have the right to force us to give to their favorite charity? I don't think so.